Hello, and welcome to day one of Asexual Reproduction. And this is what yours looks like. And I'm going to be going through a slideshow, which is a lot of images. And there's not too much for you to write on here. You're going to go through your own answer for the do now. And then just a definition of asexual reproduction and labeling these different types of asexual reproduction and a question at the bottom. So let's go ahead and get started. So why do you think you are no longer the size you were when you were 5? Like what happened? You grew. How do you think you grew? And we'll be talking more about this throughout asexual reproduction, sexual reproduction, and human reproduction, the 3 sections of Unit 6. So asexual reproduction. Fill out your own answer for that. I obviously, I'm not going to give you your hypothesis, fill out your own answer. And asexual reproduction is reproduction with only one parent, either organism or cell. And we're going to be talking about asexual reproduction as whole organisms reproduce, but also asexual reproduction with only one parent cell is mitosis. And then this is already on your paper. The offspring are identical to parent, and there is no sperm or egg involved. So there are several different types of asexual reproduction. The first type that we're going to talk about is binary fission. And this is when the parent divides into 2 parts that are equal. Examples are bacteria, paramecium, euglena, or amoebas. And that is an image of binary fission. You can see the 2 cells are of equal size. And you can also tell that they're not eukaryotic cells. They look like bacterial cells, and they are. So this is another example of binary fission. It looks a little bit more like it does on your paper. And you can see that the resulting cells both have nuclei here, but they are splitting in like a totally equal pattern. And it starts with one parent and there's 2 offspring at the end. So asexual reproduction, only one parent. And that's binary fission. And you might want to recognize a diagram of binary fission. And then we're also looking at budding. And you can tell budding is different from binary fission because the parent divides into 2 unequal parts, the parent and the bud. An example, and the one you'll see most frequently, is yeast or hydra. And you can see there's like the larger parent and then a small bud coming off of it. And this is an example of budding in a plant cell. In a plant, this looks like a cactus perhaps. And you can see there's the larger parent and the smaller bud, and the bud might get bigger. And it is genetically identical to the parent cell, but it's smaller. And the most common example we see of that is yeast, like in this picture. And now sporulation. So this is mold. And if you've ever like opened up a package of bread and seen a corner of it is green, don't eat any piece of the bread because it is actually inside the entire piece of bread. And this sort of looks like dandelion that you blow on, but that's not what it is. This is mold inside of some bread. And so sporulation is the process by which spores are released from the parent and they germinate and grow to form new organisms. And this is what happens with fungi like mushrooms and mold. And you just have to fill in sporulation on your paper. Vegetative propagation is a process that humans use to reproduce asexual reproduction of plants. So it's a process where a new plant is produced from a portion of another plant. And this is usually something humans do. There are several different types of vegetative propagation, like graftings, cuttings, and runners. And some can happen naturally, but it is usually something that humans are doing. So you can see there, cutting is cut from a plant, and so it's genetically identical to the original plant, but it's growing as a separate organism. So that's a reproduction that's happening with a little help from humans. And here are some examples of cuttings growing in a windowsill. And they're pieces of a larger parent plant, but they've been cut and they're going to grow into whole separate organisms, and they'll eventually grow roots and they could be planted in the ground. Grafting, you can see it's bonding there with the original tree after being tied on with some kind of a bandage to hold the two organisms together, and grafting something from a different plant onto an established plant already. And you might do that with like an orchid, for example, on a fern, and then the fern tree will sprout orchids if your graft is successful. And you can see it happens with fruit trees. So to add a fruit bearing limb, if you already have an established tree, but it's not fruiting as much as you might like, and you have a fruit bearing limb from another tree, but that maybe is younger, that, doesn't have the trunk that you might want, you could use this grafting technique. And humans do that, pretty cool. Horticulture is something that humans are pretty good at. Uh, and runners, you can see here, this can happen naturally because of how humans have cultivated mint in the past. And if you ever have like a little container of peppermint plants, especially peppermint plants, what will happen if you plant it on the ground is these runners will sprout out of the container and they'll grow on their own. And this is due to how humans have cultivated mint over time. And these are all just examples of vegetative propagation. You probably won't be asked about any of these in much detail. You should just recognize that they are examples of vegetative propagation. And this last one here, I believe, is regeneration, which is the development of an entirely new organism from part of an original organism. So this is a pretty cool thing. Examples being starfish, earthworms, or planarians. They can split into two totally different organisms from one organism. So this is an example of regeneration in planaria. If it gets cut in half, it can become two totally different organisms. So pretty cool stuff. And I believe there's one more question for you to answer at the bottom. If an entire population of organisms is produced by asexual reproduction, then they will be genetically identical. Why might it be a bad thing if an entire population has the exact same DNA? It might be vulnerable to same kind of diseases. There's less genetic diversity. No real wrong answers there, just hypothesize. And today's aim was, what is asexual reproduction? And that's all, folks. Have a super fantastic day, and I'll see you all on Monday on Zoom. Bye, guys.